well, let me ask you this final question. Where have you, how
Mhm.
long have you been assimilating this information for to have it so,
Okay. Yeah, Henrik sort of asked me the same thing off air. It would be wrong for me to imply that I've had my head down buried in this sort of research for 25 years plus. I'm 45 years of age now. It's been a long series of fortuitous meetings and researches and so on like that that made no sense a lot of the time in my younger days. But I've been very interested in Christian eschatology ever since I had the wit scared out of me with these guys who go on about a beast, antichrist character, and all this sort of stuff that's coming to get me. And from that time, that sort of put me on. I need to find out more about this. And I've gone through pretty much a similar process that you allude to for yourself. In terms of going through different churches, I'm very lucky in the sense that I've had tremendous support from family. My mother, in particular, has never looked at me sideways when I've come back with some of the more crazy stuff that's influenced me in the past and so on like that. And I've gone through all that. But with regards what's become Saturn Death Cult, it started when I read a copy of Velikovsky's. It was Earth in Upheaval,
oh yeah,
the sequel to Worlds in Vision, and I was just boggled by how much, being an avid fan of documentaries by David Attenborough and all these sorts of people, I was boggled by just how much was assumed by science and how much this guy was just sort of pointing out, hey, we don't even know where salt came from, all this sort of thing that came about. And I was doing ancient history, Egyptology degree at the time, and I approached my professor at the time, a guy called Spellinger, who's become a serious antagonist in the whole Velikovskyan sort of debate, historical reconstruction stuff since. But he basically, very rudely, as I went up to him in all innocence, not to confront him or anything, I said, I've been reading this book by Velikovsky, and he just blurted out, I do not do Velikovsky, in much stronger terms than that. And I said,
yeah.
I don't do Velikovsky, and I couldn't believe his reaction. It was highly emotive, and as a 17-year-old, it just turned me right off the whole thing. I went and read the books anyway, was blown away by all the historical stuff. But, I had a very avid interest also in biblical history, and a lot of Velikovsky stuff showed me that there was historical evidence there that so many of the higher critics say don't exist for the Bible. If you only had a different interpretation of the solar system's history. I chipped away at this over the years, but, I fell away myself. For many years, I went to Hong Kong, what I call my wilderness years. Was involved in the film industry there, having a good time. And it really is only with the death of my father here in New Zealand and my mother being widowed that I basically grew up and started looking for a better understanding of the scriptures and other things all related. At that time, which is now getting on about 7 years ago, I started coming into contact with all the theories that we've discussed, other things, 9/11 truth stuff. I started realizing, hey, look, there's people out there that are actually challenging supposed beliefs on that level. But that's what sort of brought me into contact with conspiracy-minded people. And that's when I realized there's a lot of insight in conspiracy circles, but they're missing one particular key. And the people who deal with electric universe and Saturn theory miss the conspiratorial, consequences, implications of what they are putting out. And I just saw that there was common ground there that needed to be explored. Been a long road, and I've got to say expensive because the books that I buy don't come cheap. They've got a whole library now for a lot of this stuff, and it represents thousands of dollars in investments. The last 6 months have been so interesting to me. It's been worth it.
Yeah, no. What about that aspect of it? Probably going to use the Golden Jubilee Now site to put the videos on, besides YouTube. what about a donate button that can go directly to your PayPal or something like that? Are you open to donations and things like that?
I would be amiss to say I'm, of course, so any kind of earnings I can get from the site would help in any way. I did actually create Saturn Death Cult for commercial purposes as much as anything. The book is done at a very cheap level, but as I discussed in emails talking with you, my long-term goal is to take this reinterpretation of our universe into fiction. That's where I feel I'm going to personally benefit most out of this particular line of investigation and so on like that. So, yeah, anything helps, Mark.
Okay, so it's more of in a sense, novel, a fiction based on reality concepts or processes. As there people are reading fiction, or the story, the underlying process is still is a reminder of what's really going on.
I'll give you, just as a final example on that one, the work of Ian Fleming,
sure.
James Bond's creator. It blew me away to find out that not only was he the second top guy in MI6 during the Second World War, he was a genuine spy in his own right, but he actually wrote the formative memo for setting up the CIA on behalf, the British government's. America did not have an effective overseas intelligence agency, and Fleming wrote the memo that served as the British government's advice to how America should go about it, completely ignored by America as it turned out. In terms of their approach to setting up an agency, but nonetheless it's there on the record. I became very much convinced that in his later years after his retirement, Fleming, particularly in Goldfinger and these ones, were revealing stuff through the protective shield of fiction. Were revealing stuff that had actually happened, that were going on within the intelligence communities and related communities. And all it really was, when you read through Fleming's early novels, you just got to read between the lines to get an idea of what this man was privy to in terms of information. And that's always impressed me. And I feel that with Saturn Death Cult, there's such an amazing universe and potential for storytelling there. I mean, I'm entranced by Purple Dawn era of human development and what life must have been like in that environment. But there's huge scope for fictional representation. And in the science fiction, science fantasy fields, the best stuff is always based on a believable universe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
When you know how you see films and there's a planet hanging up there in the sky that is just so close it would totally violate what's called the Rorsch effect and so on. That's bad science fiction. But if you can provide a good physics model that's plausible, then you have a vehicle, for portraying the stuff. But, at the moment, the two main projects that I'm looking at is the one that we've discussed. The AD-33 is the working title, which alludes to that. That's something I'm definitely pursuing at the moment. And I have another project that is a look at a future, not a future in which Christ is revealed to the world or anything like that, but basically, if you can imagine 3 generations after an attempt by the elite to cull the human species and produce a rewilded Earth, and then re-emerge onto that Earth from underground bunkers or from orbit. And of course, I'm sort of looking at the complications, writing a story that's based on complications that face those kinds of survivors, both those who actually survive in the world and those who come out as underground bases. I don't think
that's great.
Yeah,
I love it because they haven't gone there.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love where you're going with that. That's just, it's like, okay, they scare the dickens out of us here. Have you guys thought about that?
So it's actually not a future I think will take place, but in terms of the Christian walk, I try to bring aspects in there. The problems that I'm presenting to survivors, both from underground who are part of the system and those who survived above the ground, is of course this whole idea: how do you set up a society in the wake of such a disaster. As part of it, I have an unspoken of presence of almost like a mythical kingdom that somewhere exists in the world where everything is great, which is alluding to the stone kingdom that grows to fill the earth from a Christian point of view. Key to that is that whole idea, in that day, Israel should live under its tree with its Lord God, and the other people should live under their God. But the ones who have the benefits, as in, benefit to all the families of the earth that Israel's supposed to be, they come up and basically learn from this example country how to go about things, take it back to their own people. And, there's drama to be explored in somebody who is not of Israel, not of a Christian background, but nonetheless looking at some of the practical laws that can be applied to their own culture. And just putting it into a future, environment to discuss these sorts of things. But that's where I'm at the moment.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, my mind is starting to lapse a little bit here. So
we're in saturation, aren't we? Yeah.
I think so, and I'm just so pleased that you stayed with me through this.
Likewise.
I think it's been beautiful. It's a beautiful journey, and I would really love to continue this on, see where it goes, if you're open to that idea.
Most definitely. Honestly, I'm quite privileged at the moment in terms of my commitments, so I'm open for whatever times and so on like that. I'm a great believer where two or more gathered in my name, and I do believe our discussion is very much an example of this. I'll be honest, Mark, this is what I do for church, this kind of thing. So, yeah.
I mean, I've been doing a lot of it through therapy and conversations with people, and the first thing I'll ask them is, what's your spirituality? Are you okay if we go into that? And the opening up to flexibility of ideas and not being stuck is one of the better things that I do, and that's why people will come to see me and talk to me and have me speak, because I can kind of see where they are, where they're stuck, and then know how to begin to open up that flexibility. And I think that in the world that we're living in today, maybe that's a skill that is useful. So I look at it as to say, and I've been asking to come back home and just and know where I am in this play, this grand play that's going on, and how to do that. So I think the conversation with you is really helping to solidify and give an answer to that for me personally. So I really appreciate. Thank you for that. And
well, I thank you too, Mark. I thank you too, because talking like this helps solidify a lot of ideas. There's a lot of nebulous concepts out there, and it's discussions like this that I wrote Saturn Death Cult, and I came to the realization that writing your ideas, it's like the missing link to it is discussing them afterwards. And discussion is, in my opinion, as important as anything I could ever write. So it's fantastic for somebody like me to be able to have somebody who is willing to give the time to talk these things. It's a very symbiotic situation.
Well, I hope you realize that is one of the things I think with an interview skill is people say, man, you're such a great interviewer. And part of what I keep awareness and open during the whole conversation is how can I, at the same time of gathering information or getting or talking, how can I help the person solidify what they're saying? How can I be somebody that's going to be flexible and will flow with the stream wherever it goes, that the next time they talk this, they're better at it. They have a little bit more skill.
I certainly felt that, in the course of this conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Troy, this has been an amazing conversation. I figured we might be on there for an hour, maybe two. I think we're several hours past that. I will break this up into segments, put it on audio for people to listen to, and also probably put it with some kind of video, image, or picture. So if you want to send me a picture that I could put up there, or some kind of an image where people, if they're watching it through video, they can watch it also in parts. You're an amazing man. I don't think I've ever had a conversation quite like this in my life, and I feel blessed to have had it. it has given me some major paradigm shifts that I'm going to have to sit with and see what happens to them. I would love to carry this conversation on with you again, see what the listeners, everybody out there that listens, if they have any questions and want to continue. Why don't you, if there's something I haven't said or I haven't asked you, let's go ahead and talk about that now. Other than that, why don't you give a wrap-up of how you see this conversation and how they can get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you, and where they can go to read the Saturn Death Cult or go on to Kindle to get that.
Mark, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this. I think we've covered so much that we should give it to another time to continue stuff once we've had a bit of time to refresh our minds and so on what we said. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm so pleased it's been worthwhile to yourself. Saturn Death Cult, yeah. For those who've listened to this, if you go to my website, saturndeathcult.com, you can get basically a very basic introduction that is written in an intuitive style with plenty of illustrations and diagrams for some of the cosmology aspects of what we've discussed laid out for you. Yep. Take some time to visit saturndeathcult.com. You can even contact me. There is a contact if you have any questions that you want to directly give me. That's fine. And for those who have a Kindle, there is a Kindle version of Saturn Death Cult, which has a little bit of extra information regards Saturn and electrified fossilization, which is all important stuff to know in regards to this topic. So, yeah, look forward to talking to you again at some stage, Mark.
Yeah, Troy, what a pleasure again this has been, and I think both of us we've gone through and consumed and given so much information that it's time to digest it a little bit and let it settle and refresh our minds. And I hope to do it again with you soon, and I definitely will be in touch with you, and hope the listeners out there, all you in the listening audience, have enjoyed this as much as we have. So thank you so much, Troy, and I will talk to you again very soon, I hope.
Thank you. Pleasure's all been mine. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Take care.